Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Marsanico. Welcome to the A Train to Sedona broadcast. The A Train to Sedona is also the name of a book I wrote, a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. I wrote the book in the hope that my journey would inspire yours. You can purchase a signed copy of the book on my website at lindamarsanico.com on Buy the Book page. You can also purchase it at retail and bookstores. In New York City, let's remember that the A train is an express train, so hop on board. I have a free gift for you, the cheat sheet for high vibrational living. 7 tips on how to raise your vibration. For example, there's the 7th tip, using the divinely inspired violet light to bring the energy into your body to protect and relax. There are 2 disclaimers. 1, that this broadcast does not establish a professional relationship. And 2, that the opinions expressed on this broadcast do not represent talk radio in New York City. I have a guest today, Jacob Cooper. Jacob is passionate about promoting healing. Jacob L. Cooper, the best-selling author of Life After Breath and The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder, is a sought-after speaker on grief, wisdom, consciousness, offering meditation and mindfulness seminars to help others find purpose and overcoming fears of life after death. Jacob holds a Master's of Social Work degree and is a licensed clinical social worker, certified Reiki master, certified hypnotherapist, and specializes in past life regression. As a psychotherapist, Jacob works with individuals, groups, and families to uncover emotional barriers, promote improved wellness, and achieve resiliency. Jacob incorporates mindfulness and a spiritual approach to focus on the connection between the mind, body, and spirit. In effect, this teaches individuals how to improve cognitive processing and shift their perspective. Welcome to the show, Jacob.
An honor. Thank you so much, Linda, for having me here on talkradio.nyc.
I wonder if you would tell us about how your past and your journey lead you to where you are today.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Linda. Certainly as a therapist, I really ascribe by that things are not random, that there is a reason for almost anything. And if you pop the hood, you're usually able to find indicative explanations, which really is what science, really is about, other than maybe the concept of a higher reality or God, that everything, in other words, has an explanation.
Mhm.
And so, how I came into being, I suppose, would be a unconventional developmental trajectory from, the norm, although everyone has their own unique paths, but
Yeah.
mine certainly was in a statistical bracket of unique paths in a sense that I'm a part of the 5 to 10% of the population who had a near-death experience, which is an increasing number as advancements in science and medicine, are unfolding in front of us on a daily basis. But this near-death experience was a unique experience within a unique experience, given the age, the chronological age that I had it, which was just the age of 3 years old. It's September of 1993 was when I had, my profound near-death experience, which absolutely shifted my viewpoint on reality and my life forever in this body, in this journey.
It is certainly dramatic.
Yeah.
You go.
Dramatic, traumatic, but also once I was able to really process it, I recognized, much like Pablo Picasso says, I might be misquoting, but the meaning of life, I think, is to find your gift, and the purpose of it is maybe to give it away.
Mhm.
And it took me some time to recognize this experience as a gift, and the purpose behind it wasn't to just hold on to it, but to really let it go. That, in other words, life, two things could be true at the same time. Life could be personal, but
Mhm.
it's not always about you. It really is about the ripple effect, to really transforming what you walked into to defining it as your greatest triumph.
Yes. I'm wondering if, because of the NDE, we'll call near death experience NDE from here on in
Yeah.
the broadcast, you found the gift of clairvoyance.
Yes, absolutely, which is quite common for people who have near-death experiences. A lot of top-tier mediums, in fact, that you see in the public have had some degree of a spiritual transformative experience or a near-death experience. But, to me, we all have clairvoyance. We all have the capacity to see. And again, clairvoyance comes from a French word means clair, which really has to do with our ability to see and understand unseen forces. And we have, I believe, five clairs or four clairs. I sometimes get mixed up, but yes, clairvoyance, that capacity to see. But we all have it. It's just sometimes those things are buried, and through a shakeup of the physiological body, we're able to really tap into a higher mind and a higher consciousness that we're always there, but sometimes we're not privy to at all times in the human journey.
I'll get back to that a little later in the broadcast. I'm wondering about the role of spirituality in your life.
It's my oxygen, and I think it's the global oxygen. You know, I, I'll give an example. Within a near-death experience, the difficult part is the color scheme, the colors that we have in our world are largely based off of the colors from the sun. That's the spectrum of colors that we have in this reality. In a little bit, when I really delve into potentially my near-death experience a little bit more, the difficult part is that was connecting to an eternal light, which goes beyond any measurable or describable light that we have in here. But much like the sun and the planet have an interdependence with each other, so too does our inner light on one another. In other words, our microcosmic light impacts the macrocosm. And so that's the interdependence. Much like, and I think we could learn a lot from the laws of nature. Just as the earth depends on our sun, this reality and continuity in this reality is dependent on our ability to really remember and embody the light inside each and every person.
So, would you say that your inner light was recharged or shaken up to shine more brightly as a result of the NDE?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a tremendous association of beliefs and behaviors and information influencing beliefs, which influencing our behavioral engagement with the world. And so a lot of people will walk around with what we call an ego or just
Mhm.
a set characteristics of self-perception. And many times the issue with that is that it's quite limited. And oftentimes I'll ask people in workshops to point to themselves and they'll point to a body, or maybe they'll point to a job or a spouse that they're, connected to. And I said, well, when all those things go, then what are you? Are you not existing? Are you not, going to go on? And so the point of real spirituality is to really understand the laws of nature, the laws of reality, that we live in a very finite existence, but we're infinite beings. And the important things is really to have a value systems of the things that matter, the things that are important, and to let go of the small stuff a lot of times and to recognize the temporary nature, of all these things. And so I always say when you're driving a car, you may not know what's around the corner, but if you know there is no ending, or rather there's a soft landing, it becomes an easier road and you're able to have a lot more resilience among the journey. So I think having a sense of spirituality really partners with mental health, as well as a fostered sense of resilience from a sense of trust and faith belief, and even on a further basis, even a knowing,
Mhm.
which is undeniable, shadow of doubt, understanding of things,
I
proof
know.
beyond doubt. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I feel that my faith comforts me. I pray all the time, not
Mhm.
in a dogmatic way, although sometimes I'll recite an early prayer. And I say, God, what do you think about this? Would you give me some information about this? Thank you so much for that. It's just a walking commentary
Yeah.
in this world today is very, very helpful. And I do feel connected. And it's actually one of the tips in my book that faith and the sense of connectedness that we get from it, because God is always speaking to us. But
Mhm.
if I'm too distracted, I can't hear the voice. I can't get the little prompts or the big prompts that are going to come through. So
Yeah.
faith and prayer are very important to me.
Yeah. Well, I love that quote that said, prayer is talking to God, and meditation, which I'm sure we'll get into, is a way of listening to God. But it leads to soul empowerment. I mean, so many people live their lives from the outside in, meaning something's happening externally in the world, and that, really is impacting, understandably, their inner reality. And I think spirituality, in a nutshell, is governed by a statement that his name is Rumi. He was like a philosopher, and I'm sure many people heard of Rumi, but he had a quote that said, "Yesterday I was smart and I wanted to change the world, and today I was wise and I decided to change myself." And by that I mean you don't have to go to you can't go to like a Tony Robbins things and have a whole self revamp thing. I think those things are great. But by changing the self, I mean changing consciousness, changing the vantage point that we're looking at life. And oftentimes, if we're fixated on the outside, we're seeing a lot of problems. But if we're really tapped in within, like as you said, we could find a lot more solutions.
Letting go of what doesn't serve us is essential.
Mm,
If we become angry or grief-stricken or resentful, to work on the issues, to grieve them, to acknowledge them, grieve them, and let them go really lightens us. It just makes life
yeah,
all the more magnificent to see the light rather than, as you said before, the perspective of anything problematic or dark. We can make a choice. I mean, compassion is an everyday experience,
yeah.
and it's a choice.
Absolutely. Healing is not self-abandonment. I think if you want to heal, you have to allow yourself to feel. Those two work hand in hand. But yes, continue to ascend through the experience. And I find transformation was birthed out of the ashes of pain many times. It's that phoenix out of the ashes, no pun intended with the Sedona theme, but
Oh, Sedona, my
we,
beloved city.
you could tell we love Arizona, and certainly we could talk Zona all day because that is where, in many ways, I'm sure our hearts are, and many others too. It's a wonderful place.
So our viewers might take note of the photo image of Bell Rock
Yeah,
in the background of Jacob's uh, office.
not Jacob's Ladder, Jacob's office, that too. But yeah, I carry that with me in all my offices, and we all have our own bliss, and you have to find the things that you really make you feel uplifted.
Very true. Now it is time for us to take a break. And when we come back, I would like to ask you more about the details of your NDE. So we're going to go on a break and we'll come back to discuss this very exciting event.
Are you a conscious co creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to the Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
If you don't have your health, what do you really have? It's time to feel good in your body and shift from struggle to ease. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Tripp, your host of Nourish the Soul, where we explore the sacred wisdom of your body while you sit back, relax, and go on a journey of self-discovery. Join me every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to awaken your heart, transform your well-being, and unlock a deeper understanding of yourself.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the A Train to Sedona with my guest, Jacob Cooper. Jacob, would you tell us in more detail about your NDE, the near-death experience?
Absolutely. It's my greatest pleasure to allow people to possibly remember something that might be familiar within themselves, a time when they were beyond the body. I do believe at this juncture in time, more and more people are tuning into NDEs and afterlife phenomenon because there is a part of recollection, a part that's familiar, that's gravitating them to hearing these stories. And that part is the soul, which knows it's eternal, which knows its vastness, and is unlimited by the body or any type of programming that we've really ascribed to in a limited sense of self. But September of 1993 was when I had my near-death experience. I was just the chronological age of 3 years old. Notice how I say chronological age because there is a dichotomy of chronological age and soul age, which certainly we could get into. But I was in a playground with family friends. I suffocated in the playground while climbing a ladder going into a slide due to results of contracting pertussis, otherwise known as whooping cough, which to this date was the scariest, most traumatizing moment of my life without sugarcoating it. But from losing all sense of my connectivity to breath, I was able to surrender to a breath that we all are eternally connected to, which I refer to as the breath of eternity, which is something that we're all created from. And from losing my human breath, surrender to the breath of eternity was when everything really opened up. But the last piece that I remember within myself was my brain's deprivation of oxygen. And I felt my brain just snap or crack in half due to the deprivation of oxygen. And as the saying goes, my brain cracked open and God came in. And this happened to me on a literal basis, which is something we could certainly get into regarding the brain and mind dichotomy. But once my brain cracked open, and I surrendered to this eternal breath, was when everything opened from my awareness to all things that are around each and every one of us at all times. That sometimes we have our blinders on and our human filters, but does not mean that they're not there. We could think it, but it doesn't change the reality that we have so much love and so much divine beauty around us at all times of our human journeys. But I was able to really have all of the barriers lifted, and there was like a windows without walls. There was no barriers to the other side or to heaven, and I was able to really see my own spirit guides, which we all come into this lifetime contracted to. And we usually have, I would say, two primary spirit guides. And throughout our lives, we could also have other secondary guides that we, are connected to. I was able to see an infinite amount of angels that were in front of me on the other side. was able to see my spirit family or soul family that was there on the other side, as well as awareness of past lives, awareness of God, Christ consciousness, you name it. So this was the ultimate crossing over experience that I had. But the most interesting piece was the majority, I would estimate, give a rough estimate that around 70% of near-death experiencers are really suggested by the spirit realm that it's not your time. There's stuff to continue to do on this earth school. At this point in time, that was not the case. I was in again, a rare situation where I was given autonomy as to what I would do. Would I, should I stay or should I go, as the song says? And I just simply asked, you know, if I stay, what will my life be like? And I just saw myself speaking in front of people and helping others. And I saw the impact of the many crowds that I am speaking to until this day. And so I said, while heaven is certainly for real and beautiful, the capacity to bring that down to this reality is the ultimate heaven. That to me is even greater than heaven. And I said, absolutely, I will do all these things. I will be used as an instrument for thy will. And once I agreed, that's when everything dissipated. And I woke up on a hospital bed in Long Island, New York, with a very frantic mother who didn't know where I was, and a frantic young boy who wanted to shake my mother to tell her that I was all good. Unfortunately, consistent with near-death experience research, it took me around 20 years to really fully put into words what I endured. But this didn't come without a price. Throughout, a lot of my childhood, I had to deal with what was a blessing and a curse, which was being different, which every kid is almost prescribed to move in the opposite direction. But later in life, I think the greatest thing that we can do is to be ourselves, which is a different contribution to, the consciousness of humanity. And so that is a bit of an abridged, but to the point narrative of my NDE. But I really have decided to not be defined by my NDE, but rather each and every day of my life to define and to make meaning, more importantly, of it. It doesn't change the series of events. Those were some that I walked into. But each and every day, it's my duty and job to make sense of ways to integrate those beautiful images and experiences that I endured.
What an amazing story. I'm interested in how you perceive how you are affected by your clairvoyance. I realize that we're all, we're wired in the same way. But each of us, I have a clairsentience. I sense and feel things. But I'd like to hear a little bit about your gift.
Yeah, well, I like that you call it a gift. It certainly is something that we all have. Some people sharpen that gift and embody it. After my near-death experience, my consciousness was greatly altered. You see, what really I learned was contrary to material reductionism, which will state that once the body and the brain goes, so do you. NDEs put that in a conundrum or a sense that brainwave activity and physical activity is nil to at a very low measurable level. And so as a result, consciousness should be the same if the body and the brain have a direct correlationship with the mind. And what I experience in my NDE is that there is a mind that goes beyond the brain. In other words, the brain is not a producer of the mind, but rather just a filter between the two worlds.
Yes.
And so after having this experience, I just remembered that my brain was a lot more open and I was able to really connect to the spirit realm a lot easier. The brain was not a barrier, it was an ally. And so as a young kid and throughout my childhood, I would feel this sliver of light going into my brain and easily able to access the other side, the
Mm.
angels, all those things I had in my NDE. There came a point in time where I knew that I wasn't meant to go that far and I was meant to be in this reality. Many near-death experiencers, they feel more comfortable over there once they come back than over here, and there's a sense of homesickness, but a drive to be over there rather than over here. And the spirit realm wants us to be over here while connected to over there, to be balanced, in other words. But I had a lot of intuitive experiences, interdimensional communication, premonitions that would, to this day, are still coming true from my childhood, and young adulthood. But there came a point in time where I was in preschool and I was seeing all these beings around the classroom. And I turned to a classmate and I just said, "Do you see what's unfolding? Do you see what's happening?" The classmate just had the most bewildered look on their face. And I knew right then and there that, wow, I'm really different in this world that was once very comfortable to me at a certain point in time that I was getting used to. Feels like an incredibly foreign place. And it felt that way for quite some time until I was really able to get public and share this experience and not to hold on to it, but rather simply letting go of it for other people. But to answer your question, clairvoyance was always a part of my life, but it was more of a nuisance as a kid than anything else. I wouldn't walk around calling it psychic or intuitive, although psychic carries a lot of pathology to most psychics anyway, with the media depiction of it. But it was a nuisance where I would see things, hear things, know things, and they would happen. And I would just say, can't I just live without knowing all these things? It was more of a nuisance than anything else. But there came a certain point in time where I was able to really understand that as a gift, as you said, rather than a curse.
I would imagine you would have to be very grounded because you want to be here. Because when you're grounded, you can be more involved in doing the work that you chose to do when you were given the choice.
Yeah.
Do you want to stay? Are you in or are you out? Do you want to
Yeah.
go back to the third dimension? So being grounded is a centering point.
Absolutely. And so many of us came in here for the sensual pleasures of the earth, the fragrances, the
Mhm.
sounds, the smell. And yes, you do have that on the other side, but it's a different vibe, the physical experience. And so we're here to really fully maximize that experience, to be connected with our, obviously upper chakras aligned to the higher realms, but also feet on the ground. When it's our time, we'll be there. But I've really come to learn that much of our heaven is a lot in terms of how we live here and the lives that we impact and the enthusiasm that we have. And I use the word enthusiasm because that comes from the word entheos, which means the inner God. And when we're enthusiastic, we're connecting to our inner divinity. And so finding those things that you love, they're not trivial, they're divine.
That's a beautiful explanation, Jacob. Of course, I'm very interested, and we're getting ready for break, but I'm very interested in when you talked about your brain cracking in half.
Yeah.
Perhaps you could say a little bit, and then we'll have the break, but just introduce us to it, if you would.
Yeah, it felt like I was plugged in the wall this whole time, and all of a sudden that plug was just yanked from that wall. And I just felt this incredibly loud sound, and just as if my whole brain like felt like it just snapped in half. It is funny if you're familiar with James Van Praagh. He's well-known intuitive, and I just had one of his co-hosts on, a conversation with one of his co-hosts, and she had a book also that was called Cracked Open, and she had a similar NDE as well. And so that was the first time I've ever heard anyone in my life that also had this similar experience, which allowed more universality and less isolation with this phenomenon. But all it is simply is getting out of our own way and really understanding the brain and what it's there for. And certainly we can really highlight the brain as brain health, to me, is mental health and spiritual health in many ways.
So we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I will have a question or two about the brain cracking in half.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're off to having a break now.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the A Train to Sedona with my guest, Jacob Cooper. Jacob, I'm wondering if there was any imaging done on your brain to see any changes anatomically after your NDE.
No, but I really wish that I had. And I say that because I like to tangibilize all these things. And, the more evidential data that you're able to have to really show, the impact of these things, the more credibility, it is. To me, I view all these things similar to a courtroom where you're presenting a case and you're not trying to, but the case is really decided if it's evidential, in something of another realm or maybe other. And so that's something in particular that NDEs are able to do. But again, the more pieces of evidence that you're able to portray, the more hard proof they're able to provide in supporting the case of eternity.
Are you in touch with a lot of other people who have experienced NDEs, like kind of like a support group?
I have in the past, yeah. What really changed my life was, first of all, knowing that this was a thing. I didn't even know what this was called. I was gifted a book, in my later teens, early 20s, by an author that you may be familiar with by the name of Betty Adie, who
Yes.
wrote the book Embraced by the Light. She was a
Mhm.
guest on the Oprah Winfrey Show and was one of the first major high prolific NDEs to come out in modern time. But obviously, NDEs have been going on for thousands of years and roots within Plato and biblical verses. And so this isn't anything new, but now there's more of a safetiness for people to come forward within their experience. But that's something that changed my life because I was like, wow, you name it, you could tame it. And this had a name. Other people had it. And that led me to understanding of different groups, such as one of the groups is called the International Association of Near-Death Studies, otherwise known as IANDS, which was, founded by Dr. Raymond Moody in many ways. And Dr. Moody is a good friend of mine, and he coined the term near-death experience in his best-selling book, Life After Life, in 1975. But Raymond was, a clinical psychologist as well as had a doctorate in philosophy, and he had a couple of students who had these phenomenon, that kind of came to him, and he just started to take notes and study these things, and he really devised a set criteria and baseline for near-death experiences.
So on another topic, what happens when we die?
Um, it's easy. It's living that could be very hard, and I've learned that as a near-death experience. I think we all die, but not technically, but we all don't live while we live. And there's a lot of people who are alive who, you could live 95 years and not live a day, really. So really it's about maximizing this reality because I think from my conclusive data and personal experience that this life is not trivial in regards to its relationship towards what we experience in the hereafter, the relationships we build, the lives we impact, and the things that we love are all a part of what, continues on the other side, as well as healing from traumatic experiences, difficult moments, because it does take a very courageous and brave soul to come here, but also the amount of growth that happens that comes from being on the earth for the soul is incredible, particularly in these moments when we're faced with so many challenges. But every era of history has its own question, and as a society, we do our best to provide the best answer towards that problem or towards that question. And so we're trying to do it now, obviously, at this juncture with all the tools and innovations that we have. Hopefully, the technological innovations don't exceed the spiritual evolution, because that always leads to demise. But when we die, is my firsthand experience that it is the most euphoric, beautiful experience that you can really have. You're free, you're unencumbered, you're not attached to, the emotional turmoil and pain, the physical pain, mental health conditions dissipate, any type of debilitative condition goes away. And this has been proven by people who've had near-death experiences, and I'll illustrate that in just a moment. People who have been auditorily impaired and never been able to see anything physically, um, they, I'm sorry, hear anything or hear auditory is hearing, visual is seeing. My apologies. Um, have these near-death experiences, and all of a sudden, for the first time, they could describe hearing a sound or seeing colors for the first time, which really allows me to understand that the pain that we carry through some of our limitations while we may be here do not continue when we're over there. That does not mean, that we have to evade these things. Everything is there for a reason. This life is not random. I certainly learned that in my NDE that there's a higher intelligence beyond everything that we go through on a soul level. And the assignment is laid out in front of us and something that we're all capable of moving through. Um, but it's a heaven is a beautiful place, but it also has a subjectivity in its nature, where one person's heaven may look a lot different than another's based on their own bliss. Everyone has their own bliss. For instance, my grandfather in every reading comes through fishing in my backyard. He loved fishing. I can't stand it. He loved it, but that's his heaven. That's what he's doing. He lived that way here. He continues to do that over there. So again, it's not a retirement home where you just stop, doing the things that you love and you stop serving humanity. It's a very active place. But you're not getting burnt out or anything of that nature, but it's not, going into Boca Raton and Century Village and just kind of like kicking it off over the sunset. No, the soul is here for a purpose and continuing to grow, whether over here or over there as well.
I'm of the belief that we've chosen to be here at this time, as challenging as it is.
Right.
Many, many beings wanted to be here, and not everybody could be here. But we're
Mhm.
here because we could fulfill our purpose. So we have many, many different purposes that we're dealing with today. And I'm an optimist, and I do feel that we're going to get through all of this to a place where heaven is on earth.
Yeah.
I also wanted to comment on Betty Eadie's book, which was an amazing book for me, and remembering how she, through a mistake in a procedure in the hospital, her soul left her body and she saw where she was and she didn't want to come back. She was
Yeah.
having tantrums, and finally, Creator said, let us show you what your work is.
Mm.
And they showed the work, and she said, well, I'll go back to Earth, but only if you take me as soon as my work is done.
I guess she still has more work to do because she's still around. I see her, on LinkedIn and she's still doing her thing and has, some shows going. So yeah, Betty's wonderful and she's still doing her thing. But also, yes, NDEs come with a double-edged sword where it's very difficult to integrate it. A lot of times it does complicate interpersonal or romantic relationships. Prior belief systems are drastically altered. A lot of people who might be agnostic, atheistic, or traditionally religious usually gravitate to a more spiritual orientation, and they like things of more sensitivity. They're more sensitive to sounds, to smells, to colors. There's more of like a gentleness and a softness that they, gravitate to in this life. Um, and I like the quote that Raymond had a book that said God is bigger than the Bible, but I also say, the afterlife is also bigger than religion. It might have an angle towards it, but spirituality doesn't exist because of religion, but many ways despite of it. You could find spirituality within religion, but it's our innate eternal nature is
Yeah,
spiritual.
yeah.
And religion is a path up to the mountain that seeks to understand spirituality, I believe.
I do want to understand more about your beliefs and your work, and we'll get to all those topics. You have authored two books,
Yeah.
and Life After Breath was the first one.
Yep. And I could show them up here. This is, let's see, Life After Breath
Mhm.
and The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. These are my two books, and hopefully more coming down the pipeline. Uh,
And you have a podcast, Jacob's Ladder, every.
The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. It's bi-weekly, every other week now. Um, just for scheduling purposes. But yeah, I love. If someone asked me like, what do you love the most? I would say I just love connecting with the community, building community. Oh, that's so important. I think the biggest epidemic that people have since the pandemic has been the epidemic of loneliness and people feeling disenfranchised. And so technology is a double-edged sword, and why not use it as a way to form coalitions, to form communities? So that's what it's more of like my pro bono type thing, just to give back and create community and support for seekers along their path.
So at the end of the broadcast, will you talk about how they can reach you on that? This is also part of the show notes, but you can also talk about it toward the end of the toward the end of the broadcast. I do want to hear more about your beliefs.
Mm.
What would you start us off at? We have about a minute to go before break. Give us a little sample.
Well, I'll give an example. Raymond Moody was once asked, "Do you believe in an afterlife?" And he said, "I don't believe in one." And then Vanity Fair took that as a hard stop and ran with it. And E-Man doesn't believe in afterlife. And what he was saying at the second point of the sentence was, I know there's an afterlife. I don't believe in it. Much like I don't believe in there's a sun, there's clouds. I know it. So, I think regards to understanding, there's many layers. I think it comes from a hope to a faith to a belief to a knowing. And, knowing goes without a shadow of doubt. So to me, there's inner knowings, but each day is a further understanding to even deepen those knowings. That's not set in stone, that they could always expand, not contract, but expand. So that's the way that I try to really improvise and to really deepen because you're talking about the infinite. Um, a lot
Yeah.
of people will say, I fully understand. You might know a piece that you know of, but there's so much more to it. and it's impossible to fully understand because it's infinite, it's eternal. I do know that God is love and God is eternal, God is infinite, so are we. That simple thing I do know.
Yes, those are very profound things. I know also that Deepak Chopra says we know very little about things.
Yeah,
Yet we do know some of the important truths of what resonates in our heart.
no,
When I was coming on to spirituality, I thought whatever I take in needs to resonate in my heart, and then I take it in.
that's it.
With that, it is time for a break, and we're going to come back and hear about Jacob's work and perhaps more of his beliefs. It's time to take the break.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Hi, I'm Linda Marsanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the A Train to Sedona with my guest, Jacob Cooper. Jacob, why are we here?
There's a subjectivity to that question, but also a universality to it. I think in many ways it's been my experience is, you know, someone who I was very close to, my grandfather, had a tombstone and has a tombstone. Not had, he didn't come back and reincarnate and but has a tombstone. And on the tombstone it said, he made the world a better place.
Hmm.
And how do people do that? And how do we measure, that? To some, a better place means more buildings. Maybe you have more employments or stuff like that. But, a better place isn't, always about the material. It's about the impact. Not so much about what you said, but how you made people feel, as Maya Angelou said. So, really we're here to create a ripple of love on our surroundings and to elevate the world around us. And how we do that is just by being true to ourselves. By being true to ourselves, that's our unique contributing vibration. And not to be someone else's version of ourselves, but by being true to ourselves, we're connecting to the unique ray of God that we all possess. And so remembering ourselves and embodying that light is really how we make this world a better place. And I think the purpose of life, to be true to you and remember who you really are.
I think it's quite a journey to understanding who we are. And I want to comment on making the world a better place. And what came up in my mind is a children's book called Miss Rumphius.
Oh,
And Rumphius was an aunt of this young girl, and she grew up talking about how Miss Rumphius would go around the world and meet people of importance and how she did things in her work. And then Miss Rumphius grew ill and she planted flowers, lupine flowers, all over the meadow.
Mm.
And all over the meadow, you saw these beautiful flowers. And we're told that Miss Rumphius did that to make the world a better place.
Mm.
And
Wow.
so it could be something as simple as planting flowers. It could be smiling at people as you walk down the street. I think of a smile as a burst of sunshine, a burst of love. That could make somebody's day. And I know that people have smiled at me, and it's just helped me so.
Yeah.
Took it with me and went with it. So making the world a better place with that ripple effect, we affect everyone.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And if more people were to remember, and I love that story that you just illustrated, that God is not outside of us, and it is possible that we got God all wrong, that God is a part of us, connected to us. We are, divine sparks. Then, so many people spend a lifetime trying to really intellectualize or understand God, and others change the world through embodiment. And by being in joy, by being in love, by being connected to that light, is how we do things, is how we make the world a better place. But, so many people walk around with these identities such as I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm not a good student, I don't make enough money. And all of these self-limiting belief systems really do the world an injustice because those may be a slice of our pie. But at our core, you take an orange, you squeeze an orange out, you get orange juice. You take ourselves, you really squeeze ourselves out. What's left is infinite divine light and that spark that's always there beyond all the turmoil and pain and all those self-limiting belief systems.
It's really our choice and our ability to recognize how powerful we are,
Yeah.
that so much is possible.
Yeah, it's like that Marianne Williamson quote that says, "Our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate; it's that we are powerful beyond powerful beyond comprehension." So absolutely, we can't be afraid of our own power, and that's why you asked me the purpose of life. Remembering who you are, that is really important.
We have about 5 minutes before the end of the broadcast. Would you tell us about your work?
Yeah, well, that might take more than 5 minutes. No, but what specifics about my work? No, we'll keep confidentiality, obviously, as clinicians. But I do work in the mental health field, like yourself, I believe. I do see clients, on a private basis, as well as, I do work in a psychiatric hospital setting as well, working very closely with adolescents and teenagers, populations that I'm very passionate about. But in my private practice, I work, I do mental health services, I do hypnotherapy, past life regression services, Reiki energy work. So you have a brain, you have a body. We try to find ways to really move the needle of your lives and really helping people feel a little bit brighter and lighter while working through obviously what's there. And so, I just love to be present and to meet someone where they're at and to hopefully generate the hope and the faith past the pain. But yeah, I do a lot of public work as well, a lot of public presentations, with, in organizations that I work closely with, such as a place called Helping Parents Heal, which we just had a retreat in Phoenix that had, over 1,200 parents who'd lost children, which we call as shining lights parents, because they are able to really, through engagement in helping parents, recognize that their light is internally connected to their child's light, as well as I have presented with organizations such as Forever Family Foundation, which you may be familiar with if you watch the Netflix docuseries Surviving Death. They were featured in it. So a lot of grief organizations I work closely with in terms of my presentations, and I'm going to be presenting at the Omega Institute coming up, as well as the Edgar Cayce Center in Virginia Beach. So I do a lot of organizational and work on, with some of the, more reputable, centers with more reach and, history to them.
Omega Institute is very prestigious. I remember a top person in the organization told me, we invite speakers.
Yeah, that's true. I did.
98% of our speakers.
I would have told me, you said, Jacob, 10 years ago, you're going to be speaking in the Omega Institute. I would have said, take a hike. No way. I started off my collegiate career in remedial reading and writing courses. I wasn't even allowed in a community college to take credited reading and writing courses. And so I really do credit all the people around me who supported me on this journey. It's a team effort, and the teamwork made the dream work. And so I'm just a dude. I'm just a reflection on a lot of the support that I've been able to have.
Well, you've grown so much and you have so much to offer. How can people get in touch with you?
The easiest way is jacoblcooper.com. That's jacoblcooper.com. And there you could find me on Instagram, Facebook, email, and also, checking out my upcoming events and services, as well as my YouTube channel, The Wisdom Jacob's Ladder. You could subscribe, check that out, and feel free to browse some of the prior conversations that we've had.
How long have you been conducting the wisdom of Jacob's Ladder?
Not long, it's been maybe a little bit over a year. We're almost at 100 episodes, which is
Ooh,
pretty cool. We've
yes.
had guests like Neil Donald Walsh, Allison Dubois, if you're familiar with Paul Selig, Suzanne Giesemann, to name a few, and, Eben Alexander as well. So it's cool when you turn on the video and you're able to just kind of see the people that you grew up reading their books in libraries and they just pop in front of you. But you know what? Most of these guests, they just see themselves as just a servant of the divine. There's no ego. It's a lot different than how you see themselves in that, than how they see themselves in this industry. And that's a beautiful thing.
Well, we're all connected and we're all the same.
That's it. Yeah.
And when I'm happier, you're happier. When you're happier, someone else is happier. We're all adding to this wonderful vibration of love. Any last words for our listeners?
Last words is to really learn how to get out of your own way. The quieter you become, the more you can hear, and you are enough just as you are, and you are perfect just as you are, here to express a divine perfection. Just remember who you are and remember the direction that you're facing in life. If we're facing on the outside too much, we're going to have and feel a lot. If we turn within, we'll find a lot more clarity to navigate our lives.
Beautiful. Thank you. And listeners, I want you to know that next week, my guest is Gigi Arnaud, a former dentist who is now a life coach. Join us next week. Jacob, thank you again for being my guest. It's been joyful.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for listeners for tuning in. An honor.
We're at the end of the show.